history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining us. I suspect many of you perhaps yesterday did watch the memorial service, so we'll spend some time talking about that for just a few minutes, because it is, again, a very significant event. First of all, between the stadium and the adjacent overflow areas, probably 90,000 people were in attendance. But in addition to that, originally our estimates were maybe 3 million watching across media platforms. Now they're talking about 100 million people watching the Charlie Kirk Memorial. The other day we heard an individual talk about the fact that the historical first for the greatest reach of a gospel presentation was when Billy Graham was speaking in Central Park on television, and this one now probably will exceed that dramatically. And so Jack Hibbs said, you might even mark in your Bible that you were part of an experience that took place yesterday on September 21st. And again, this has been an incredible event, and we'll spend some time as we go through the program today talking about it. But of course, you had a number of recording artists, people like Chris Tomlin and Brandon Lake and a number of others. You had the president, the vice president, as well as the chief of staff, 4 cabinet officers. We'll have a chance in just a minute to hear one of those individuals, Marco Rubio, but also perhaps one of the most powerful situations and circumstances and most memorable events was when Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, announced that she forgave her husband's killer. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and it's what Charlie would do. She also talks about viewing the body. I also saw on his lips the faintest smile. The bullet came, he blinked, and he was in heaven. And so this is just an incredible event. We are going to, of course, as we go on, talk about some of the different aspects of this. She, of course, also argued that this evil could not defeat the good. And there are many people that have said that though the killer tried to make this a funeral, in some respects it turned out to be a revival. And there were individuals who are in the cabinet making presentations that were like gospel presentations that were very significant. One of the ones, before you even heard from some of the political leaders, came from what was Charlie Kirk called America's pastor. That's Rob McCoy. And he's an individual that when Charlie Kirk got more and more famous said, you're in Who's Who and I'm in Who's That. But nevertheless, you still want me to be around. And Charlie said, well, you're America's pastor. And he had said before this, and then yesterday, again, I may not be America's pastor before this. I may not be America's pastor after this, but for at least the 11 minutes, I'm America's pastor. And giving the gospel presentation may be, again, the most significant opportunity to express the gospel in one broadcast than maybe we've ever seen. And there was a time in which he required all the people that are believers to stay seated and then asked those who were going to make a commitment to Christ to stand up. And across the area of that stadium, you could see just an incredible number of people that stood. So we can, as we will all through the program today and even through our week, talk about some of that. But I thought for just a minute it would be worthwhile for you to hear at least one or two of the comments. And this one comes from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. We had him on a while back when he was just the senator from Florida. But here's what he had to say.
Impactful. In just 31 years of life, he made a difference. He mattered, and he will matter now more than he ever has before. And let me close with this. How do you remember? This is a memorial service. It's to honor him. How do you best remember it? I'll take the liberty of saying what I think we can best do. Look, I think he had a tremendous impact on young Americans in general. I think he had a very special and direct impact on young men in this country. That's one of the greatest developments I've seen. It's been very positive. I think we remember him for that.
One of the personal assistants for Charlie Kirk, probably his best known, is Mikey McCoy, and he actually quoted from philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, "The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule has just begun." Throughout the program, and we probably throughout the week, might even be playing an occasional clip from Charlie Kirk, who spoke for us at our 50th anniversary celebration of 50 years of Point of View, and he was the first recipient of the Marlon Maddox Innovation Award, because we wanted to award those sort of rising stars many years ago who were using media in an innovative way, and he was the first recipient, and we'll hear some of the things he had to say. But at the meeting, I think we're right in saying that this is the first time that Charlie Kirk met Ben Carson, and they exchanged cards. And if you watched yesterday, Ben Carson actually reminded us that Charlie Kirk died at 12:24 p.m., and he read from John 12:24, "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." One more comment, if we could, from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
But Charlie Kirk was bold. He actively sought out to engage peacefully, respectfully, those who he disagreed with. As recently as 2 days ago, we learned of one of the hosts on CNN who said that one of the messages he had gotten just a few days before Charlie's passing was from him, inviting him to dialogue. And he did this on campuses, he did this on podcasts, he did this on radio shows, he did this on television shows. Time and again, he sought to engage those he disagreed with, because he understood that we were not created to isolate ourselves from one another, but to engage. The irony in all this is that what our nation needs, one of the many things it needs, is the ability to discuss our differences openly, honestly, peacefully, respectfully. And Charlie Kirk did that more than anyone alive in America today is doing.
Going to take a break, but just before we do so, let me just mention our first article is a very good piece by Peter Navarro. It's called Charlie Kirk's Legacy, and he refers to him, and I don't think this is hyperbole, as the greatest political organizer of the past 50 years. It says Charlie Kirk will go down in history as the most effective political organizer in presidential politics in the last 50 years, and compares him to two other individuals that were very successful. Ralph Reed, who, of course, was the youthful executive director of the Christian Coalition, and then David Axelrod, who was an individual that was very significant in the election of Barack Obama. And when we come back, we might get into that in a little bit more detail. But I might just mention, as we're going to the break, one of the things we will be talking about this week is the fact that it is our Truth Team. And this, I think, is an opportunity that as we look back to the legacy of Charlie Kirk and to look forward to what needs to take place next, you can be certainly a strategic individual involved with us as well. As we go to the break, we will encourage you to go to the website and see that we have a banner there that reminds us that not only is this a way in which you can support this ministry, but over this next year, this 250-year anniversary since the Declaration of Independence, we're going to be doing a lot to educate children and grandchildren that they need to know about our history. And in some cases, we need to educate ourselves because we still need to learn some of that. Going to take a break. We're going to talk about what's going on this week in our Truth Team. All that coming up right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
The news these few months is full of violence with both shootings and stabbings. It's worth taking a moment to evaluate and challenge some of the phrases being used by pundits and politicians. One of the most prevalent is to decry political violence on both sides. Let's start with an obvious perspective. Political violence is wrong whether committed by black or white or whether committed by liberal or conservative. In the past, I've quoted the common sense wisdom of Batya Ungar-Sargon. She originally served as the deputy opinion editor of Newsweek and currently hosts a program on News Nation. She has been on Bill Maher's program as well as on Charlie Kirk's program and appreciated that he had her on his program. She observes that the culture on the left is opposed to honest, spirited debate, has demonized the views of the other side as hateful, as fascism, as Nazism. She therefore concludes, when you call your political opponents Hitler enough times, you've signed their death warrant. She spends a few paragraphs quoting Democratic politicians who 1 minute criticize violence and the next minute call for a war against Trump and his supporters. Then she has a revelation for them. The violence is coming from inside your house. It is the result, she says, of decades of demonizing right-wing voices with legitimate views, in fact shared by most Americans. Yes, there have been some examples of attacks on Democrats, but this is a situation in which the exceptions prove the rule. Most of the attacks are against politicians, speakers, and federal agents who have been vilified as fascists and Nazis by pundits and politicians on the left. If we're going to heal this nation, we need to speak the truth. We also need to call out false arguments about political violence on both sides. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free booklet on biblical reliability, go to viewpoints.info/biblical reliability. Viewpoints.info/biblical reliability. Restoring America's Godly Heritage. Point of View.
One of the reasons why Point of View is so important is that we're seeing an all-out attack on truth in our country. Point of View, even before Rush, was really laying the foundation of what it means to be a biblical citizen in America. And now I think you're just starting to see the fruit of that, multiple generations later, where someone's like, oh yeah, by the way, I became a Christian and I understand the world correctly because of Point of View. You're only going to see more of that, by the way, in the coming years and the coming decades.
Point of View. Restoring America's Godly Heritage.
Again, comment by Charlie Kirk at our 50th anniversary of why we encourage you to support Point of View. And as we always do during our Truth Team Week, we bring in our good friend Collin Lambert of Lambert Creative Media, an individual that's a good friend. And you drove up here to spend a week with us, and it's always great to see you.
It is great to be here, and I'm so excited about Truth Team Week. This time we're talking about restoring America's godly heritage, and that is something that Point of View's been doing for 53 years. So we're so excited about the opportunity this week to tell you about all the reasons you ought to be supporting this wonderful organization. You know, one of the things that seems to go across many not-for-profits is that only a small number of people who listen or who engage actually give. And so we want to encourage you to be part of those who get into the game. In fact, we've been talking a bit about Charlie Kirk. He was said to have said this about his children and how he wanted to behave for his children. He said his daughter was the one born at the time when he said this. He said, I don't ever want my daughter to remember me as someone who sat on the sidelines.
Yes.
I want her to remember me as someone who got involved in the game. So what I want to share with you today is, as you're listening, as you've maybe been listening for months or years to Point of View, don't sit on the sidelines. This is not the time. It's not the time to withdraw. It's not time to sit still. It is time to move forward. There is a lot of work to do. And Charlie Kirk was doing it, and Kerby and the team do it here every single day on Point of View. So I want to encourage you to get involved with Truth Team Week. How do you do that? It's really simple. 800-347-5787. 5151 is the number to call, 800-347-5151. You can go to pointofview.net. Kerby talked about the big banner there, 250 years, restoring America's godly heritage. Just click on that. You've got all kinds of options. First of all, if you want to give a one-time gift, we are grateful for that. Whatever you can give, I encourage you to do that. And then we have three giving levels where we'd love to give you a special thank you gift as part of that. At $30 a month, we have a special collection of Point of View booklets, and they look like this. They come out regularly, and I like to tell Kerby, I've told him many times, I love these because I can look at any of the topics that he's written on, and in about 10 minutes, I'm fully informed not only about what the issue is, but what does the Bible say about it, most importantly. So those booklets for $30 a month, and Outlook Magazine. And might I just mention, if you do not have Outlook Magazine, believe it or not, the title for this most recent month's edition, September, Are We Heading Towards Civil War? Talking about political violence. Kerby, this hit people's homes 4 days before Charlie Kirk was shot.
Yes.
I mean, these are the kind of topics you're dealing with, and again, bringing a biblical perspective. So for $50 a month, you get the Point of View booklets, but you also get this amazing hat, which we've gotten ready for you, celebrating the 250th anniversary of America. Now, I had to look it up because I remember in Texas, we celebrated our 150th anniversary, and it was called the Sesquicentennial. So the official term for the 250 years is sestercentennial. Sestercentennial or quarter millennial, but this is the celebration cap, has Point of View on the back of it, has the American flag on the bill and in the back, and the logo in the front that talks about celebrating 250 years. That's for $50 a month or more. And then let me point out this amazing, beautiful hardcover book that we'd like to put in your hands for a gift of $100 or more a month. It is a hardbound copy of the Constitution of the United States and then selected writings from founding fathers. This includes things like the Boston Massacre by John Hancock, Benjamin Franklin writing on the Civil War, the farewell address of George Washington. It's got the Constitution. It's got the Bill of Rights. It's got the Federalist Papers. I mean, there is so much in here, and it's a beautifully bound book. It's our gift to you just for that $100 a month or more. So that's where we are, Kerby. It is an exciting time. It's Truth Team Week, and folks can get involved right now. Our goal is $150,000 for the week. This helps us continue the work of Point of View that you're doing so beautifully every single day of the week, and to continue to bring you incredible information from a biblical perspective each and every day. Again, now's not the time to withdraw. Now's not the time to sit still. Now is the time to move forward and make sure that this kind of information, these kinds of materials are available for you, for your kids, and for your grandkids. You can help us this week on Truth Team Week.
You know, we were talking about Charlie Kirk. He started Turning Point in 2012, and at that point, Point of View was already 40 years old and had been around that long. And you heard him mention just a minute ago, before there was a Rush Limbaugh, before there was a Sean Hannity, there was a Marlon Maddox. And 53 years of tradition and 53 years of broadcasting, very significant. And I just hope that as we certainly want to reflect on the impact of Charlie Kirk, if you would like to give today, I hope that you might think about giving the gift today in honor of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And if you want to say that to the individuals that answer the phone, or to add that as a memo to your gift online, I will try to communicate to one very good friend that I have that works at Turning Point about the way in which, even while we were in the midst of raising the funds to keep Point of View on the air, that we wanted to honor Charlie Kirk, who was, of course, honored just 3 years ago, if you can believe that. Matter of fact, he had to leave early because his wife was pregnant with the daughter that we now see. And again, this is an opportunity for you to give. I know you don't give to get, but again, that $100 a month level is something I know I'm going to get, because it has not only the Constitution, the Declaration, all the Federalist Papers, papers, whole sections of Thomas Paine's Common Sense, things from the Continental Congress. First time I've ever been able to find something that's all in one particular resource, which is like a coffee table book or one that you can put on your shelf. And later in the year, we're going to spend some time really educating you and your children and your grandchildren about some of this, where we'll encourage you to read one of the Federalist Papers, and the next day I'll come back and talk about that and how that relates to our biblical perspective. But let's not forget why we're here. This week, Truth Team, we have a goal. What's that goal?
We do. It's $150,000. And you say, how does that relate to your overall budget? Well, our overall budget for Point of View, and I can tell you this is very minimal compared to most ministries that put out the kind of materials that Point of View does on a daily basis, is $1.3 million. That includes a very small staff and every day of broadcasting, all of the work that goes into it. $150,000 in the spring and in the fall. Those are key times where we need to hear from you, where you can help us continue the work of Point of View. And again, now's not the time to sit back. Now is the time to make sure that programs like Point of View exist. In fact, one of the things we've learned, if we've learned nothing from Charlie Kirk and what's happened after his death, there are people right now who are hearing little bits and pieces of Charlie's story that are looking for answers, Kerby. They're looking for answers to life. They're looking to answers about politics. They're wanting to know what this whole world is all about and where do we fit in. Those are things you talk about and engage with every day. So we want to make sure an organization like Point of View is here for, again, you, for your kids, your grandkids. $150,000. Let's see if you might be the first couple of people, maybe 5 people, step to the phones or to the internet right now and join us. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
I think Colin's done a great job of setting the table. Let me set it for the week, because a little bit later, Lathan Watts, Vice President of Alliance Defending Freedom, will be with us. Later in the week, we have Michael Ferris. We have Gary Bauer. You know that's going to be good. Walker Wildman, Bunny Pounds. As a matter of fact, we will, in some cases, be talking about individuals who grew up listening to Point of View that are now making a dynamic ministry, and they are having an impact because people paid it forward. We're asking you to pay it forward now.
Now's the opportunity, and again, you can make sure that the legacy of Point of View continues for your kids, for your grandkids, for those in your community. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Well, again, let's take a break, and we'll come back. We'll get into some other issues in the news. Especially, I might point you to our website, this first article on Charlie Kirk's legacy. I'll just mention that briefly, but then we'll move on to some of the other articles in the news. And, of course, just a little while, we'll have in studio with us Lathan Watts, Vice President of Alliance Defending Freedom. 1-800-347-5151. Give us a call right now.
Well, today is the day, the start of Point of View's Truth Team Week, and Point of View needs you to make this week a success. Truth Team Week is something we celebrate 2 times a year, and it's time to celebrate the critical role of Point of View's monthly supporters, the Truth Team. Without the Truth Team, there would be no Point of View. If you wanted to find a way to help repair America's moral foundation and protect freedom for the future, now is the time for you to act. Now! Join the team that is committed to restoring America's godly heritage. Join the Truth Team today. By giving this week, you'll also be eligible for special thank you gifts. To join the Truth Team and see the gifts available to you, visit pointofview.net today. You can also call us at 1-800-347-5151. Tell us you want to join the Truth Team. Again, online, that's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again. Don't forget you can give us a call at 800-347-5151. And we are in studio today with Collin Lambert. A little bit later, we're going to have Lathan Watts with us. And all through the week, we'll be hearing from a number of experts, either in studio or by phone. But I thought for just a minute, we would come back to this idea of Charlie Kirk's legacy. One of those which has resulted after his death is the fact that many people are asking how many millions of souls have been reached for the first time with the gospel because of the number of individuals that tuned in, perhaps just out of curiosity, into the memorial service yesterday and heard, of course, Pastor Rob McCoy, but many other individuals, many of whom are in the cabinet, giving what I think would be pretty close to a gospel presentation. But I thought I'd also point us to our first article because I think Peter Navarro is right that he will go down in history as the most effective political organizer in the past 50 years. And when you look at two other possible rivals, certainly let's talk about Ralph Reed, who's been on the program with us on a number of occasions, the executive director of the Christian Coalition, and due in large part to the involvement that he had back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, certainly was able to flip the House of Representatives in 1994 to what sometimes was referred to as the Gingrich Revolution. I think certainly you could argue that the election of George W. Bush, especially in a swing state such as Florida, is due in large part to Ralph Reed. But on the other side, the architect of Barack Obama was David Axelrod. And David Axelrod really put together not only the message, but the data, and really had figured out how to match some of the soaring rhetoric at the time with some of the cutting-edge digital analytics. But again, recognize that at the age of, 18 years of age, in 2012, running around in the Republican convention, this young boy by the name of Charlie Kirk was actually saying we can reach the young people. By that time, many times Republicans had written off the youth vote. And if you look at the 2020 election, President Biden carried the 18 to 29-year-olds by double digits. But by 2024, a lot of that has to do with the ballot chasing operation of Turning Point Action and some of the others, that Donald Trump cut into that margin significantly, winning outright a majority of young men and making significant gains among Hispanic and black youth. And so when you look at each one of those individuals, they made a contribution, but that's just the only part, because if you were ever around Charlie Kirk, and we talked about this on our Friday weekend edition, he was actually saying to many of the people around him that he would rather spend more time talking about Jesus and talking about Christians, talking about the need for us to have strong families and to really encourage men to be very responsible young men in their marriages and homes. And so that's another legacy that I think we're going to hear for some time, especially since I do know some of the people that work there at Turning Point and will pick up the mantle and continue that on. But I think it brings us back, Collin Lambert, to why we do what we do. Even as he was beginning Turning Point USA, at that time, Point of View was around for 40 years. He was able to do something we have not been as successful in doing. The budget this last year for Turning Point was, I think, $85 million, which is about 80 times our budget. Yeah. But nevertheless, that is something that we have talked about for years. Here's the booklet and the Outlook magazine right now on Gen Z, which is coming out soon, because we've always felt the need to reach out to the next generation. That's why we have a Next Generation broadcast.
Yeah, Truth Team Week is an opportunity for you to get involved, and it's exactly because of the reason that that Kerby just talked about. We are providing day in and day out here on Point of View insights into living out the Christian faith, both in the marketplace and in our own lives. The foundation is God's Word, and the foundations of the United States of America have been lost to most of today's youth. In fact, one of the most interesting things to me, Kerby, about what Charlie did in those conversations, many times it would be like a light bulb turned on in the minds of these young people because they heard something they had never heard in the classroom. He was sharing the truth of the founding of this country, and yet they weren't hearing that same information in the classroom. Same type of thing happens here every day on Point of View. Kerby brings you not only guests, but information and articles and resources that enable you to understand exactly what's going on in the culture, what the Scripture says about it, and how we should respond. So I want to encourage you. We just do this a couple of times a year, but it is critical for the operation of Point of View that you get involved. It's Truth Team Week, and of course you can give gifts at any level. You can give a one-time gift. Automated monthly giving has become more and more accessible and usable by many of those who participate with Point of View. That's helpful as well. So I want to encourage you about that. Giving levels, $30 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. We've got some wonderful gifts for you that we'll tell you about as well. I want to take just a moment and talk to you. If you are a person who has been blessed by the Lord with your business, or right now things are going well, you've not been impacted by much of the impacts of what's happening in the financial realm. Maybe you've recently come into an inheritance. I don't know what your situation might be, but if you have something extra right now, I want to specifically talk to you and ask you to consider what I would call a leadership gift, one of those larger gifts that is going to be needed if we're going to meet our goal of $150,000. Let me say right up front, we have no matching challenge dollars this week. If they're given, they would be given by you. What's a matching challenge? It's simple. You call, you give a leadership gift and say, I want to encourage others to give, and I'll give this amount if we can match that from the other listeners here on Point of View. So if you're able to give a leadership gift, $5,000, $10,000, $2,500, whatever you can do, we'd love to hear from you. 800-347-5151. You can also go online at pointofview.net.
I thought it might be good to hear maybe something else that Charlie Kirk said, because he was certainly very strong about the need for us to speak truth into the culture. And here's something else he said.
One of the reasons why Point of View is so important is that we're seeing an all-out attack on truth in our country. Point of View, even before Rush, was really laying the foundation of what it means to be a biblical citizen in America. And now I think you're just starting to see the fruit of that, multiple generations later, where someone's like, oh yeah, by the way, I became a Christian and I understand the world correctly because of Point of View. You're only going to see more of that, by the way, in the coming years and the coming decades.
Again, the battle for truth, and that's something we talk about so often. That's why we call it Truth Team. And I thought I might mention something else just before we go to a break, because we'll get into some other issues. I'm holding up right now some of the booklets that I believe we're making available to individuals that are going to give the first-time gift. Is that correct? Because we do have an opportunity now for some of the individuals who have never supported Point of View. This is sort of a welcome gift that we make available, and I just thought that that would be just a great opportunity to talk about that, because it has One Nation Under God, the Bill of Rights. Matter of fact, one of the things we'll hear about a little bit later from Charlie Kirk is the biblical view of patriot preachers, the so-called Black Regiment. And so as we are talking about this 250 years celebration of course, the Declaration of Independence, we want to educate you, your children, and your grandchildren about some of these issues, and this welcome gift is another way to do that.
Yeah, we're going to include with those special booklets, we've got a bookmark of Point of View we're going to make available, and Kerby's going to write you a letter as well and welcome you to the Point of View family with Truth Team Week. A couple of thank yous to hand out right away. Joshua in Georgia, a gift of $200. Joshua, thank you so much. Chris in Nevada with a $50 gift. Again, great start. We need to hear from everybody listening today to meet our goal of $150,000. Let me just break it down how simple this might be. Our goal today, $30,000 just for Monday, $30,000. 30 of you stepping to the phone or to your computer, giving a gift of $100 a month or more, and we'd be right past that $30,000. Or maybe 60 of you stepping up and giving a $500 gift. However you can do that, we want to make it easy on you. Just call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Might just mention mentioned, lots of times people say, well, what am I supporting? Well, we've already talked about the radio. We've talked about the SAF and all the rest. My Viewpoints commentary is called Both Sides. The second article we'll get to in just a few minutes is by Beckett Adams, which I think connects up to that. We still have our Take Action item there. We have the video of Charlie Kirk speaking at the Point of View's 50th anniversary gala. We have Pray for America. We have the Point of View highlights on Spotify. We have 3 different podcasts. I'm running out of time to talk about all of that, but it's an illustration again. Your gift makes a difference, and I'm hoping some of you might want to give a gift today in honor of Charlie Kirk. And if you do so, I want to pass that on to our good friends at Turning Point USA. That number, which is a great time to call right now, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Of course, you can always go to the website, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Restoring America's Godly Heritage, Point of View.
Well, first of all, the Lord told us directly in the Scripture that it is better to give than to receive. And when you look at that at face value, I think most of us reject that thesis. Certainly in our culture, we think it's better to receive than to give. and the Lord completely turned that around. And yet when you look at all of the data, even the science, all the research, all the surveys indicate that that scriptural claim or that scriptural promise, in fact, is true. So I'm excited to encourage people to give, particularly to give to Point of View. And as you know, my wife and I personally support your organization. because we have a portfolio of investments we make in God's kingdom. And we've always said that we admire the work that you do. We admire the outcomes of that work and the multiplication and the young people that are growing and benefiting and being equipped to speak into the darkness of our culture. I just think it's a great return on investment.
Point of View, restoring America's godly heritage.
If you'd like to join us, 800-347-5151. Collin Lambert in studio. And Collin, it's interesting because that's Chuck Bentley, and he supports Point of View. We're going to hear a little bit later hear a clip from Chad Hufford. He supports Point of View. Ran into Lee Strobel the other day, and of course he has supported Point of View in the past. And we can go through a number of the guests that we will be talking to this week. And not all, but some of them say, not only am I very fortunate to be on this program and appreciate what you're doing, but I want to put my financial resources towards that. And that's what we're asking for our listeners to do right now.
Yeah, it's Truth Team Week. This is the opportunity you have in the fall to get engaged and become part of this special program. It's Restoring America's Godly Heritage. That is our theme this fall, and really it's something that Point of View does every day and has been doing now for 53 years. You can get involved right now at 800-347-5151. You can go to pointofview.net, and again, we've got different giving levels. You can give a one-time gift. Any amount is open, and then we've got some giving levels, $30 a month. We'd love to send you a collection of the booklets that are provided through Point of View, and these are some that actually are tied into the founding of our nation, the Federalist Papers, One Nation Under God, Constitutional Interpretation, and you even get a Declaration of Independence and Constitution in there. Those will be made available at the $30 a month or more level. At the $50 a month or more level, we got this brand new hat, USA 250th Anniversary, Faith, Family, Freedom. It's got the Point of View logo on the back. It's got a wonderful flag on the bill and on the back, and that's just our thank you gift for that $50 a month level. Now, if you can give at the $100 a month or more level, we have a beautiful hardbound copy of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. It's got farewell addresses and inaugural addresses from some of our first presidents, including George Washington. It's got the Federalist Papers. It is a beautiful book. There is so much included in this, and I'll let Kerby talk more about that in a bit, but a wonderful collection for you. Just our way of saying thank you for getting involved. Why? Our goal this week, $150,000. Our goal today, $30,000. We're going to need you to give whatever you can do today to help keep us on path. Like Bradley in Michigan. Bradley, you just gave a gift of $600. We thank you for that. You're making a difference. And again, you can participate right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or pointofview.net.
One of the things we just mentioned a minute ago is if it's a first-time gift, we also include some of those booklets. I'll hold up this one here because it is a biblical view on the patriot preachers. And one of the things that Charlie Kirk mentioned when he spoke to our group was the black-robed regiment. That was how the British referred to the pastors because they actually had black robes. And it's, again, a reminder of the fact that there were individuals at the time speaking out about liberty and trying to apply a biblical point of view. And here's what Charlie Kirk had to say.
It was the Black Robe Regiment that founded this country, of pastors that spoke the word of God and didn't care if the government of England came after them. Whitfield, Edwards, Mayhew. It founded the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of the world. It was Billy Graham that saved us in many different ways via the Lord and his courage. 20,000 open-air sermons where he said that communism and socialism is Satan's religion. Do you hear pastors talk like that anymore? Very rarely. Why is America falling down? There's a lot of reasons. Our politicians are reckless and self-centered. We don't send our best to Washington, D.C., except, Michelle, can you run for office again? I mean, that would be so great. There's all these different things. We could talk the borders wide open, all this. Let's get down to why this country is really falling apart. Because the institution that founded America cares more about skinny jeans and giving a speech that looks like a TED Talk with a rock concert than actually preaching the Word of God on Sunday and telling their congregation, North is North, truth is truth, man is man, woman is woman, life begins at conception, and America is a nation worth defending.
Some of the things,
That is what we need to start hearing.
yeah, some of the things that Charlie Kirk said. And again, you might have said, Black Robe Regiment. What is he talking about that? Those are the kinds of things we want to educate you about every single day here on Point of View.
Yeah, if you just are tuning in, that was Charlie Kirk. He was given a special award, the Marlon Maddox Legacy Award, back during our 50th anniversary celebration of Point of View. And so that was him speaking to Point of View supporters and friends. You can be one of those supporters, one of those friends right now. Charlie Kirk, I mentioned earlier, a quote from him. He said, "I don't ever want my daughter to remember me as someone who sat on the sideline. I want her to remember me as someone who got involved in the game." If you're listening today and you're sitting on the sideline and you've never gotten involved in the game, Point of View, to make a difference for yourself, for your kids, for your grandkids, for your community, Point of View every day is carrying out the same kinds of things that Charlie Kirk has been doing for a number of years, but they've been doing it for 53 years. Civil conversation, civil dialogue, important conversations about the founding of our nation, important conversations about what's happening in culture and what the Bible says about it. You can make a difference. We need you to make a difference today by joining the Truth Team. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Might just mention at the top of the hour, we're going to have, of course, Lathan Watts in studio, and he is, of course, Vice President of Public Affairs, and he understands how important it is to know that we are one nation under God, to know that we certainly have the Bill of Rights and all sorts of other booklets that we would like to make available to you and want to educate you about this year. But first of all, let me just simply say no gift is too small. I know my wife and daughter will be here later in the week, and they'll be answering the phones. I know your wife will be answering it as well, Collin. And sometimes they say, well, I'm sorry, that's all I can give. But anything that you can do would be greatly appreciated. But on the other hand, no gift is too large. And certainly some of you could possibly give $100 or more a month. And that is why I really want to emphasize this resource that we make available to, of course, the Outlook magazine and the booklets and all of that. This incredible volume that has the Constitution, the Declaration. You will hear from Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, Noah Webster, as well as James Monroe and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. You'll read the Federalist Papers. You will see all sorts of various messages given, first for the birth of the nation, then during the Revolution, and then afterwards in the forming of the Constitution. It is a resource we want to put in your hands. It is incredible. I'm going to have one on my shelf and maybe even one on my coffee table because I think so highly of it. So this is a good time as we go to a break. If you would want to join with us, a one-time gift or hopefully a monthly gift, be part of the Truth Team. That number is 800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. Or you can simply go to the website, pointofview.net. That's a place where you can see some of those thank you gifts, and it's also where you can make your pledge as well. Please, if you can call right now or visit the website, we'll be back with more right after these important messages.
Well, today is the day, the start of Point of View's Truth Team Week, and Point of View needs you to make this week a success. Truth Team Week is something we celebrate 2 times a year, and it's time to celebrate the critical role of Point of View's monthly supporters, the Truth Team. Without the Truth Team, there would be no Point of View. If you wanted to find a way to help repair America's moral foundation and protect freedom for the future, now is the time for you to act. Now! Join the team that is committed to restoring America's godly heritage. Join the Truth Team today. By giving this week, you'll also be eligible for special thank you gifts. To join the Truth Team and see the gifts available to you, visit pointofview.net today. You can also call us at 1-800-347-5151. Tell us you want to join the Truth Team. Again, online, that's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I do appreciate Point of View and what you folks are doing. You really are doing a great job to educate and to help Christian folks do a better job to honor Christ in all that we do.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you. It's a blessing. Been listening to you for several years. Your program has helped my family see current events and elections and politics through the eyes and the principles of Scripture. And that's been enlightening, and we're trying to pass that on to others.
I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoyed the Millennial Roundtable, and I love the program altogether. I think Kerby is great, and I really appreciate all of y'all, all that y'all do, and the truth that y'all put out.
Hey, great show. Love all your comments and what you're talking about.
Thanks again for what you do.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, let me again encourage you to give us a call, 800-347-5151. The website is pointofview.net. This hour, we're going to talk about the need for maybe even educating some members of Congress as to the Constitution. So this is something we do at Point of View for all of you, but even some members of Congress maybe need a little bit of an education. In studio with me is Collin Lambert. And Collin, you've been looking at some of the people that have been calling or going to the website and making their pledge.
Yeah, we got Joshua in Georgia, Chris in Nevada, Bradley in Michigan, Randy in Georgia. Folks are stepping up. And again, now's the time to do it. It's only Monday, but we're going to try to cut down on the Procrastinators Club on Friday, try to move more people to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's all this week. Your chance to get involved in making sure that Point of View continues to do the work that you expect each and every day on your behalf. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Or pointofview.net.
Let me just mention that from the 4th of July to September 17th, from, in other words, the day of the Declaration of Independence to the day of the Constitution Day, 76 days. And we had an individual saying, I wanted individuals to pray all 76 days, which I thought was kind of interesting. I did not know that. But on September 17th, we have in front of us here an article that we did talk about on that day, but I think it is best to have the guest in studio. And that is Lathan Watts. He is Vice President of Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom. And Lathan Watts, an education for Senator Tim Kaine on Constitution Day. And we've been talking about the need to provide some of these resources for our children and grandchildren. Maybe we should send a packet to one of the United States senators. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that'd be a start. Yeah, there's probably several. He just happened to be the one to say it into a microphone.
He said the quiet part out loud, right?
For sure. And
he's been thinking it for some time.
In a Judiciary Committee hearing where he said that the idea that rights come from God was, quote, extremely troubling, and said that that's what they believe in Iran, and compared our foundational idea to a tyrannical regime in Iran. And I was watching this sort of, not live as it happened, but I saw a lot of reaction on social media or whatever, and I looked up the video and watched. I just could not believe it. I was like, this guy's from Virginia, like the home of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Patrick Henry. My first thought was how the mighty have fallen. Like, this is what Virginia is sending now to the United States Senate.
And he's not a nobody, because he was a vice presidential nominee, right?
He was Hillary Clinton's VP nom. So, I was a little bit blown away by those comments. And then he was rightfully kind of called out for them by several people. And he doubled down on it, wrote an op-ed in Fox and posted it at Fox News. So, this idea that he finds so extremely troubling is obviously written in the Declaration of Independence, and it is I think it was Margaret Thatcher that said America is unique in history because it's the only country founded on an idea.
Yes.
And that is the idea.
That's the idea.
I mean, that's kind of it. Like, it's so fundamental and so foundational that, if you're wrong about that, you're not going to be right about really anything that matters. You know.
Well, let me quote from, this will be one of the booklets you receive if you're a Truth Team member. G.K. Chesterton said that America is the only nation in the world that is founded on a creed. That creed is set forth with dogmatic and even theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. Now, you might say, well, that's an interesting quote because it implies that these ideas have a religious foundation, and they do, because when certainly Thomas Jefferson is quoting from John Locke and others about laws of nature and nature's God, or that you're endowed by our fill-in-the-blank creator with certain unalienable rights, and these are self-evident truths. These come from religious ideas, and it is sad today that a lot of these individuals can go to law school. You've been one of those, but you have a history background too, so you know a lot more than they do, and never even understand the religious origins of our Constitution.
Well, yeah, even my own experience in law school, I mean, as a first-year law student, I had 2 semesters of constitutional law, and we were never once assigned to read the Federalist Papers. I mean, constitutional law, you're supposed to be interpreting the Constitution. You want to know what the people who wrote it were thinking, you read what they wrote about the Constitution. And in the Federalist Papers, the text that is cited in all the arguments for ratification, the text that is cited more common than anything else, and it's not even close, is the Bible itself.
Yes.
The book of Deuteronomy alone is cited more than anything else, which, amongst other things, is sort of Moses given a farewell address and instructions on how to govern a nation under God. So the entire purpose of the Constitution is founded in biblical anthropology, because it's founded, it's designed to protect against the concentration of power. Why do you need to protect against that? Because man has a fallen nature. That's the fundamental thing that they're trying to protect against. Knowing that man's nature is fallen, if he's given power, that power has to be checked. And that's the whole purpose of the Constitution.
You know, I was just thinking, Collin, one of the things I really am promoting is this at the $100 a month level book that has all the Federalist Papers. But even if you can't, you have already mentioned that we make available the little booklet on that, which is like the Cliff Notes version. But when I went to graduate school, I did have to read the Federalist Papers, and we were to exegete those the way you would exegete the Bible. But that's because I was fortunate enough to have an individual who was working with another individual who actually wrote this book and article about the fact that the most quoted document of the founders during the framing period of the Constitution was not Montesquieu, not Locke, not even Samuel Rutherford, as important as all those people were. The most quoted document was the Bible. And interestingly enough, they even then looked at the quotes, and 3/4 of those quotes came from actually the sermons of the pastors of the day. And so that's why we have this one on a biblical view on patriot pastors. So these are some things that seem to have eluded at least one member of the United States Senate. I suspect many others don't know it either, but that's why we're always thrilled to have somebody like Lathan Watts, who has both a history degree, and I actually pull on his history degree as much as I pull on his law degree, because we need to know this. And this is one of the reasons why I hope people will think about supporting Point of View, because we are going to be in this process of education this year during this 250th anniversary to educate you, your children, and your grandchildren with books, booklets, videos, all sorts of resources.
I believe we've been talking in the last hour about Charlie Kirk's death, and one of the things that I've seen throughout social media and in newspaper articles and so forth is this almost awakening to, well, what was he talking about and what does it mean? And again, we've talked about many of the colleges where these students are in history classes and learning about civics. They're not learning some of these things that Lathan just described. They're just not learning them. And so they hear them. It's for the first time. You see the light bulb go on in their brain. And this is the kind of work that Point of View has been doing for 53 years. You can help us continue that as you participate with Truth Team Week at 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
We'll continue our conversation with Lathan Watts, Collin Lambert, but you could give us a call right now, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website, pointofview.net. We'll see you back in just 3 minutes.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
The news these few months is full of violence with both shootings and stabbings. It's worth taking a moment to evaluate and challenge some of the phrases being used by pundits and politicians. One of the most prevalent is to decry political violence on both sides. Let's start with an obvious perspective. Political violence is wrong whether committed by black or white or whether committed by liberal or conservative. In the past, I've quoted the common sense wisdom of Batya Ungar-Sargon. She originally served as the deputy opinion editor of Newsweek and currently hosts a program on News Nation. She has been on Bill Maher's program as well as on Charlie Kirk's program and appreciated that he had her on his program. She observes that the culture on the left is opposed to honest, spirited debate, has demonized the views of the other side as hateful, as fascism, as Nazism. She therefore concludes, when you call your political opponents Hitler enough times, you've signed their death warrant. She spends a few paragraphs quoting Democratic politicians who 1 minute criticize violence and the next minute call for a war against Trump and his supporters. Then she has a revelation for them. The violence is coming from inside your house. It is the result, she says, of decades of demonizing right-wing voices with legitimate views, in fact shared by most Americans. Yes, there have been some examples of attacks on Democrats, but this is a situation in which the exceptions prove the rule. Most of the attacks are against politicians, speakers, and federal agents who have been vilified as fascists and Nazis by pundits and politicians on the left. If we're going to heal this nation, we need to speak the truth. We also need to call out false arguments about political violence on both sides. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free booklet on biblical reliability, go to viewpoints.info/biblical reliability. Viewpoints.info/biblical reliability. Restoring America's Godly Heritage. Point of View.
Listening to Point of View, again, like you said, 3 generations. I was a little kid when we first started, and the seeds that are planted in that next generation, whether they're your kids, your grandkids, it's so vital because if we're not passing along truth, if we're not passing along good principles and a godly perspective, a godly worldview, then our fight ends with us. And the legacy that you guys have created, I think, can mirror the legacy that each one of us as parents should be fighting for within our homes, our families, to make sure that the truth of Scripture doesn't stop with us, that we are empowering and preparing the next generation.
Point of View. Restoring America's Godly Heritage.
Collin, just one more aspect of that, the legacy of Point of View. More and more as I'm traveling around, and Jana Weidler and I travel and meet many of the donors, I see 2 generations, and here Chad is talking about 3 generations of individuals that have been listening to Point of View, then they pass it on to their children, and then their children pass it on to their grandchildren. I've met a number of 3-generation legacies. I've met a lot of 2-generation legacies. Met a number of people people that said, quite frankly, my parents made me listen to this, but now I'm glad that I did.
Right.
And so I've met all of those combinations, and it's an illustration, again, that this is why we say pay it forward. There are others that are going to be hearing point of view in the future, and your gift right now makes that possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that for myself. I listened to Marlon Maddox as a young man, and then certainly in my early radio years, because we carried it on the station that I was part of, and of course Kerby is part of that as well. 53 years providing this quality education, and we were even talking here in the studio about, Charlie Kirk was not educated in the traditional sense of a college. He talked about that, but he was self-educated. And look what he turned out to be, being a self-educated young man. You have the opportunity to do that every single day through the materials and the resources that Point of View provides, through the guests like Lathan, through the online resources, through the booklets, through the magazine. Again, a reminder, Outlook Magazine, if you're giving at $30 a month or more, you receive one of these magazines every month. If you received yours in September, it was about political violence, and it landed in your home 4 days before Charlie Kirk was shot. This is how this team at Point of View is on top of what's going on in the United States of America and around the world, helping you understand the truth of God's Word and how it impacts culture. So as you give your gift, as many others have already, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. Let me thank Randy in Georgia, gave a gift of $365 a month for the year. That's a $4,300 gift. Mike in Texas, $30 a month. Lisa in Texas, $200. Thank you all for being a part today.
Lathan, let me come back to you for just a minute, because as we are talking about 250 years, 1776 was a very good year, not only for the Declaration of Independence, but for the wealth of nations. And I'll hold these booklets up because the other day we felt it was really important to go through these booklets on capitalism and socialism, and the one on socialism. Now, you know why. We have the possibility that the next mayor of the biggest city in the United States, the financial capital of the world, will be a Muslim Marxist. I'll just focus on the Marxist part. And we have the younger generation simply thinking that socialism is better than capitalism. And you were in Washington, D.C., and they're talking about the fact that not only are we dealing with 250 years in terms of the Declaration of Independence, we're talking about 250 years of this book that was written by Adam Smith, who actually wrote, and I had to also read those, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and then The Wealth of Nations. And this nation is prosperous, one, because of the economic freedom, and two, because of the political freedom.
Absolutely. And Smith, he's probably more famous for economics, but he was a philosopher first.
Yes. Moral philosophy.
In moral philosophy, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
If you take the founding era concept of ordered liberty and combine that with a free market economy, which is basically probably the biggest contribution of Wealth of Nations, is making the case for free markets. If you have those two and a moral and religious people, all three of those things are what has set America apart throughout the history of the world, and it's made us the freest, most prosperous country in the history of the world. And it really doesn't work without all three of those things.
Yeah. I call it a tripod. Any one of the legs too short. If you get rid of morality, you have problems. You get rid of the capitalist free market system, it doesn't work. If you get rid of freedom, political freedom, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And lots of people have flirted with Marxist ideas and tried to implement them into governments at varying levels. Like, it looks like New York City is about to give it another try. It never works out well. It just doesn't, because Marxism is founded on a flawed idea that it negates what Smith said in Wealth of Nations, that human beings are fundamentally self-interested, and he's not saying that in sort of the selfish, prideful kind of way, but that your instinct is to act in your own self-interest. And so in a free market economy, when people are acting in their own interest, they end up benefiting each other. Marxism is based on this flawed idea that you can compel people to not act in their own self-interest, but to somehow act for the good of the collective. And if you just give the government enough power, we will force it down everybody's throats, and everybody's going to do what's right for everybody else. And it never works.
Never has. And again, it's based on a flawed biblical anthropology again, and you find that in the Federalist Papers, and you certainly find that in Wealth of Nations. We talked about the fact that some people now are complaining, and I think rightly so, about crony capitalism, and there's some things where we've gone the wrong direction. But a free market, if you have economic freedom, by definition, you end up having political freedom, because if you limit the size and scope of government, then it gives you greater freedom and greater opportunities for individuals to begin to use their gifts. It's a system in which bad people can do least harm and good people have the freedom to do good works.
Absolutely. And even that term, crony capitalism, is a misnomer because it's placing some of the blame on capitalism. The problem is cronyism. And if you think
elitism,
if you think cronyism is bad under a capitalist system, take a look at the cronyism in a Marxist system, where it is a completely different life for the people who work in the government than it is the people who are governed.
Well, these are the kinds of things, Collin, we talk about. And if you are listening right now and you say, I sent my child or my grandchild off to school and they came back with a head full of mush and they are convinced that socialism is better than capitalism, do we have some answers to that? Yes, we do. We have booklets on that. We have videos. We're going to be doing teaching on that. We've been doing some teaching on some of the others. We'll be doing teaching on the Federalist Papers, on the Wealth of Nations, the arguments, the critiques, all of that. That's the kind of stuff we do here on Point of View.
Each and every day, and including guests like Lathan and others that you'll have and hear this week. 800-347-5151 is the number to call to be a part. Our goal today, $30,000. It's going to take everybody listening right now doing something to help us get to that goal for today. $30,000. We're over $5,000 in so far. Maybe you can be a part of that with one of those leadership gifts, a $2,500 gift, a $5,000 gift, a $10,000 gift, whatever you're able to do. A $10 gift, $20 gift, $40 gift. Every single gift matters, but we need to hear from you today. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
One other question just for Lathan, and that is, we played earlier some of the comments by the Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk. But I might just mention that one of the things that Senator Kane was complaining about wasn't just the remarks by Riley Barnes, but also the speech by Senator Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said we're a nation founded on a powerful principle, and that powerful principle is that all men are created equal because our rights come from God, our Creator, not from our laws, not from governments. That is the kind of person maybe in the future we'd like to have as president, and the individual that was critiquing it is the kind of person that I hope some people in Virginia want to rethink.
You can do better, Virginia. I mean, your history proves that. We the people, as the Declaration starts out, are the first guardians of our own liberty. And when you are participating in a republic where you get to choose the people who govern you, you have a responsibility to choose people who understand these principles, because it is a completely different viewpoint of how to govern. If you see the government as the grantor of rights or as the protector of those things, it's two completely different worldviews.
Again, Lathan Watts' article on the website, pointofview.net. And, of course, I've got a commentary coming out on that, and we've talked about it before. But as we go to a break, let's encourage people to give a gift. And then when we come back, I think Lathan has some things to talk about free speech as well. But that number is very simple to remember. It's 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net. Can we get 5 phone calls right now? We'll be right back.
Well, today is the day, the start of Point of View's Truth Team Week, and Point of View needs you to make this week a success. Truth Team Week is something we celebrate 2 times a year, and it's time to celebrate the critical role of Point of View's monthly supporters, the Truth Team. Without the Truth Team, there would be no Point of View. If you wanted to find a way to help repair America's moral foundation and protect freedom for the future, now is the time for you to act. Now! Join the team that is committed to restoring America's godly heritage. Join the Truth Team today. By giving this week, you'll also be eligible for special thank you gifts. To join the Truth Team and see the gifts available to you, visit pointofview.net today. You can also call us at 1-800-347-5151. Tell us you want to join the Truth Team. Again, online, that's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, we're going to, in just a few minutes, talk about free speech and censorship, and you won't want to miss that. But Collin Lambert, we certainly have had a number of people saying that we do believe in what Point of View is doing, and we want to support you financially.
We've had folks from Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, Texas, and maybe you're next. We'd love to hear from you. 800-347-5151. We're up to $6,420 for the day. That's a great start. Our goal for the day, $30,000. So we've got about $23,000 to go, and we've got about, 26 minutes left in this hour. So maybe you can help us out with that right now. Pointofview.net. Just click on the big banner. You can fill that out in 2 or 3 minutes. And again, the phone call is very quick as well. 800-347-5151. If you can give a one-time gift, we're grateful for that. If you can give it $30 a month or $50 a month, right now, 10, 15, 20 people stepping forward and giving a gift of $100 a month. Think about what you spend on social media, what you spend on streaming services, what you spend on coffee. Maybe. Think about where you spend those dollars and how much of an impact your gift to Point of View could make. Help this legacy ministry continue. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
You know, Collin, one of the things we talk about with Lathan Watts so often is this issue of censorship, because in some respects, we talked a while back and have posted his article that appeared in National Review, Who Will Protect America's Speech from Foreign Censorship? Because in Europe, the European Union has what's called the Digital Services Act. Now, we enjoy a tremendous amount of freedom here in social media and the rest, but you've been to other countries, even just going north of the border, what's happened in Canada. By the time you get to England, you get to the European Union, that is the case. So that was one we talked about, and it's certainly one we've posted. But I thought I would also say it's gone from bad to worse, Lathan, because we now have an individual. I don't know how many people even know who Graham Linehan is, but he is a comedian, and he's Irish, and he is the writer of the TV show Father Ted. Well, nevertheless, he was over here in the United States. He was in Arizona, gets on a plane, lands at Heathrow Airport, and Charlie Cook, and you've been on with him on various broadcasts, says this was obviously a setup, because if indeed, there's some times when police officers overreact or whatever, but here they sent no fewer than 5 officers to arrest him at the Heathrow Airport, and it was because he had some tweets on transgender issues. I'd like to have you tell me this isn't true, but this looks like North Korea, and yet this is in the land of all these great individuals like John Stuart Mill and Thomas Paine, and they even listed Monty Python. And something is seriously wrong, and what happens in London and what happens in England, I hope, does not come to the United States.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we work internationally. We have several cases in the UK. We're working really hard on this Digital Services Act from multiple fronts, because not only for the people that live there, but it is going to impact Americans. It is impacting Americans because it applies to all the major social media platforms. Right. And if one of the EU member countries sees something they don't like and tells one of these social media platforms to take it down, and they refuse to, they risk fines of up to 6% of their global revenue. Now, I have yet to see, I mean, I think Elon Musk did a lot when he bought Twitter for freeing up the platform, but I've yet to see any of these social media platforms indicate that they're going to, if they get one of these, reports from an EU country, somehow wade through the millions of users to determine, well, if this is an American user, I don't know, there could be maybe a constitutional free speech
First
issue
Amendment,
here. So I don't know if I can do this. But if it's a European, maybe they're not going to risk 6% of their global revenue to do that.
No,
frankly. So that's why we're as I said, we're fighting this on a lot of fronts. And yes, these are private companies, and so what we've seen here, our Supreme Court has drawn, a line. I'm not sure it's the best one, but they have drawn a line that says when government is coercing the private sector into censorship, then you can't apply the First Amendment because that's the government coercing the actual censorship. They don't have that in the EU. They have this thing called the Digital Services Act, and it just reiterates what I talk about a lot when I get to do some public speaking, that the reason we fight so hard here not just to maintain what we have, but to advance freedom, starting here and around the world, is by looking at all of the cases that we have going on internationally. I can tell you, if you lose these freedoms here, there is nowhere left to go.
Yeah.
Nowhere left
You
to go.
can't sail to another country that's going to provide any more freedom.
There's just not.
It's just not.
And we've got multiple cases in Europe. Our Päivi Räsänen, Finnish member of parliament, who tweeted a Bible verse at her church when the church announced they were going to sponsor a local pride event. She's now been in court 3 different times. She was prosecuted under criminal law in Finland for tweeting a scripture at her church. And we're going to be, I think, at the Finnish, their equivalent of their Supreme Court this month. And now we've won each time. But in Finland, if the prosecution loses, they get to appeal. Another difference between their legal system and ours. And so we've been successful so far, but we're going to have to do it again.
Yes.
And, I can go on and on about things that are going on in other countries, but that's why we protect these things so
Let's go back to a couple of years ago, because this Collin gets into the fact that we had Aki Green on, and this is an individual who was in Sweden, and he preached Romans 1, which anybody listening right now says, of course we preach on Romans 1. Well, no, not in Sweden, because it went all the way to the Swedish Supreme Court, another ADF case. They eventually won at the highest court, but at what cost? He said, I'm never going to preach on Romans 1 again. So getting, even putting a Bible verse or preaching on some of these issues just illustrates how authoritarian these governments have been. And that's why we just, again, encourage people to support Point of View, because we're giving you a chance to hear from these individuals that are fighting these cases and winning these cases, not only here in the United States Supreme Court, but even overseas.
Yeah, I mean, the world is changing in front of our eyes, and our country is changing in front of our eyes. The things we're seeing, I think most of us would say 10, 15, 20 years ago, we may have talked about it or thought maybe it could happen, but it's upon us. And so the cases that ADF is fighting, the stories that you relay every day here on Point of View, Kerby, are critical for us to be aware of, for us to understand, and most importantly, to understand the foundations of where our belief system and where our legal system and all of that come from. And again, Scripture is at the basis of it all. And so as you think about where you can invest your dollars for the future, legacy ministry like Point of View is one of those places. We're going to need some legacy type gifts today. Maybe a $2,500 gift, a $5,000 gift. Maybe you could do that. Maybe you could do $100 a month, $50 a month. We've got some wonderful thank you gifts at each different giving level. At $30 a month, we've got these wonderful Point of View booklets that we'll make available for you. $50 a month, the Sesquicentennial Cap Celebration, 250th anniversary Point of View right there on the back. And of course, this fabulous book with the Constitution, the United States of America's Bill of Rights, inaugural addresses, farewell addresses from presidents, the Federalist Papers. It's all in this beautiful book that we'll make available to you. Those are just thank you gifts. The key is be a part of this ministry that's making a difference every day and has for half a century. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Those little booklets you mentioned just a minute ago also go to an individual that might be making a first-time gift. And a couple of weeks ago, we had the idea that, only about 1% or even less than 1% of all the listeners ever have given to Point of View. So we just suggested for those 99%, maybe you could give $10. Well, again, this is now even a greater incentive, because some of these booklets on One Nation Under God, the Federalist Papers, as well as the Bill of Rights and a couple of others are available to you, and we would love to send those to you as well. So I'm hoping that if you've been listening for some time, you've never really given, and you never really thought about giving, I hope you might think about that right now. And when we come back, I want to talk about the fact that, yes, we are concerned about free speech in Europe. But I have a piece here that comes from, of all places, the Wall Street Journal. The Attorney General maybe needs a free speech tutorial. And that piece from the editorial board also relates very much to a person that we have on the program with some frequency, Robert Knight. Leftists in Britain and America have no respect for free speech. So we're going to talk about what that means too as well. But as we go to a break, I know you would love to hear what Lathan Watts has to say, but this is a perfect time where you won't miss what he has to say if you give us a call right now. That number is 800-347-5151. We have staff waiting by the phone to take your phone call. 800-347-5151. And, of course, the website is pointofview.net. Don't have to have all the money in hand. We are looking for your pledge, and we certainly have a very significant goal we'd like to meet before the top of the hour. Let's see if we can do so, and we'll be right back.
Restoring America's Godly Heritage. Point of View.
Well, as you know, there are a lot of places you can get information, but there's only a few places that you can get the right information. And I think Point of View brings to the Christian community the insight necessary to understand the issues of our day. And I'd hate to think what our country would look like if we did not have programs like Point of View and what Point of View has been doing for 3 decades. So I, for one, am grateful that we have Point of View out there.
Point of View, restoring America's godly heritage.
Again, some comments from Tony Perkins, Family Research Council, and I love his line, there's lots of places where you can get information. There are only a few places where you can get accurate and really truthful information. And that's kind of interesting, Collin, because when Marlon Maddox started the program 53 years ago, it was because people weren't getting any information. And that is, there was sort of a humanistic, progressive, liberal filibuster going on, and he wanted to provide an alternative. And that is still the case, because there are a lot of stories we cover that legacy media never covers, but we've come to realize there's another issue. There's so much information, sometimes people don't know what is true and what is false, and so we give you facts and information, a number of the articles we've posted today, so you can read them for yourself, and you don't have to trust us. You can look at all the material that we make available, and that's what we're dedicated to do.
I love your desire and efforts as well to reach the next generation.
Yes.
You want to know where they're getting their information? They're getting their information from TikTok. Medical information, financial information. My daughter is raising a new baby, and she finds health information. What do we do with the new baby? I'm like, don't find out on TikTok. Ask us. We raised 3, and all different generations now, especially these younger generations, are getting information from a source that is just not trustworthy. You can count on Point of View to give you trustworthy, factual information from a biblical worldview perspective, and that's the most crucial thing. As you give your gift this week, you can make an incredible difference in the next generation. It's already happening with the work that Point of View is doing. 800-347-5151, pointofview.net. Don't let today go by. Don't let today get put off and miss your opportunity to be a part. One of the things Kerby shared just a moment ago, and it's true in many organizations, it's sad but true, less than 1% of people that participate every day with Point of View are actually giving. Did you know that means that if everyone that was listening today gave something today, Truth Team Week could be over on Monday? That's how quickly Truth Team Week could end. Anyway, I want to encourage you, be a part. Big goal this week, $150,000. Today's goal, $30,000. We're at $6,500. Got about $23,000 to go. Could you give one of those gifts of $500? Maybe $500 a month, maybe $1,000, maybe a $5,000 gift. Whatever you can do, we need to hear from you today. You truly can make a difference for others for now and for eternity. Truth Team Week, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Lathan Watts in studio for a few more minutes, and Wall Street Journal put it this way: Pam Bondi needs a free speech tutorial, and they also then talk about Ted Cruz's finest hour. We'll maybe get to that tomorrow, but this is a basic understanding of the First Amendment, too much to expect from the nation's Attorney General. Though we appreciate the current president and his administration, we certainly are quite willing to criticize that when they make mistakes. And this one is a big one, because the argument is, if you are targeting anybody with hate speech, we're going to come after you. Now, certainly Kelly Shackelford tried to explain that maybe she was talking about come after you if you make a threat. But this whole idea of hate speech, that's not in the Constitution, so help us out.
Right, and if you're going to make the claim that there needs to be some sort of exception to the First Amendment's protection of free speech, then you need to be able to define what that is.
Yes.
And that's the biggest problem with hate speech, or the term disinformation. Like we talked about the DSA in Europe in the last segment, and that's the thing that they are empowering their governments to go after. Anything that they think is disinformation, hate speech, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, hate speech is, it's a very vague, amorphous term. And so in the DSA, it's in the eye of the beholder that happens to be a government bureaucrat.
Very dangerous.
In the rest of the world, the actual working definition of hate speech is any speech that I hate.
Yeah.
And so if you are then in power to do something about that, that's very, very tempting. Right. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said most men will withstand adversity to truly test his character, give him power. And that's why there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. Now, there are exceptions.
There are a few.
If you are literally inciting violence, that is not protected by the First Amendment. And so, I didn't hear what Kelly's comments were, but maybe that's the line that he was drawing. But as you said, I mean, ADF is a C3. We're nonpartisan. We will work with people on, R or D by their name if they're committed to the principles that we're trying to protect. And so we're not, beholden to either side. We're going to, God willing, be around long after this president leaves office, long after the next president leaves office. And when we see things like this, that, giving as a charitable interpretation of what she said as I can, a mistake, then we call it as it is. That's a mistake.
That's balls and strikes.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, Collin, that's something to think about, because we recognize that there are times when people call us, I can't believe you're criticizing the president. Well, if he's not holding to the constitutional principles, or if we get a guest on that makes some heretical statements, we even have a booklet on heresy. You can fill booklets on that one for sure. We want to call those correctly as well, because as we just heard Tony Perkins say just a minute ago, there are lots of places where you can get information, but do you trust the information you're getting?
Well, and I love that it's called Truth Team Week this week, because that's really what it's about, providing truth, God's truth, and the truth of the news. I mean, looking at it from a biblical perspective, but also sharing facts and dealing with those facts, whether we like them or not, which you do every day. You take these articles, you take this information, you digest it, and you see what's the truth, and then you comment on it. And again, from a biblical worldview perspective, your gifts enable Kerby and this team to do that every day. All these incredible resources, the resources online, the magazine, Outlook magazine, the special booklets, point of view booklets that you receive, all of that together makes this one of the most powerful ministries in the country, on air every single day. And again, 53 years is the legacy. You can help us continue that at 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Lathan, just before you go, let me just mention we have adflegal.org, 4 cases before the Supreme Court. We have prayer targets, and one of the benefits of just joining with us here is we have a Pray for America. We'll use some of those cases as they get close for you to pray for that. But you have 4 cases right now before the Supreme Court.
Yes, the lawyers are very busy. The first one will be on October 7th. That'll be argued October 7th. That's Kaylee Childs versus Salazar. That's the censorship
one.
Of counseling in the state of Colorado. Don't get me started on the state of Colorado. We don't have that much time left. We're also defending a Women's Resource Center in New Jersey from legal harassment by the state attorney general there. And then we have 2 other cases where we're helping states defend laws that protect women's sports.
So again, that's what we provide every single day on Point of View.
Love it. And you can be a part. Call right now, 800-347-5151. Go to pointofview.net. Click on the big banner. Just takes a couple of minutes. Fill it out and be a part this week of Truth Team Week.
Let me just mention, we're going off the air in just a minute, but you can still call after we go off the air. You can certainly go to the website at any time, 24/7. Click on that banner that says Join Now, and we really encourage you to do so. This is going to be a great week of Truth Team, great guests and the rest. First of all, I want to thank both of the Megans Engineering, and Karen and Steve, thank you for producing, and Collin, thank you for being here. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Point of View.
Well, today is the day, the start of Point of View's Truth Team Week, and Point of View needs you to make this week a success. Truth Team Week is something we celebrate 2 times a year, and it's time to celebrate the critical role of Point of View's monthly supporters, the Truth Team. Without the Truth Team, there would be no Point of View. If you wanted to find a way to help repair America's moral foundation and protect freedom for the future, now is the time for you to act. Now! Join the team that is committed to restoring America's godly heritage. Join the Truth Team today. By giving this week, you'll also be eligible for special thank you gifts. To join the Truth Team and see the gifts available to you, visit pointofview.net today. You can also call us at 1-800-347-5151. Tell us you want to join the Truth Team. Again, online, that's pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.